Welcome back, guys. So I have a really cool project this week. It's actually been sitting on my shelf for a few weeks. But this is a Cliff Arquette crafted Civil War soldier. And my neighbor and good friend of mine, Mike, does a lot of yard sailing and house cleanouts and stuff. And every now and then I help him out, and I found this gem with him. He helped me. He wants me to help him, make this a little bit nicer. So he has this box, and the idea is to make a stand for this little guy that'll fit snug in this box so it won't rattle around. Not exactly sure how I'm going to do it, so we'll figure that out. Though I do want to give you a little information on this piece here first, before we start. This was crafted by Cliff Arquette, who had a stage name of Charlie Weaver. I know a lot of older gentlemen know the name Charlie Weaver more than Cliff Arquette, but it actually says on the bottom, a Cliff Arquette antique soldier from Thomas Industries, made in the United States. And it's a depiction of a Charleston Charleston Light Dragoon from 1855, which is Civil War, and they fought on the Confederate side. This thing has some weight to it, which is kind of surprising. I'm not sure what it's made out of. He runs a store on eBay, and I'm going to put the links in the description where you can actually pick this guy up. Really cool, really detailed. Anyways, let's get to it. Now the first thing that needs to get done is I need to get a size, the internal size of the box. So we're going to set that aside. I'm going to want it to sit like this. The odd thing about this box is it tapers on the inside. I don't know if you can see that or not. So whatever I do is going to be an awkward fit, I believe. We'll work on the outside of it. I think we're going to have them sit like that. Should be like that. So what we will do is first, we'll get an internal depth of the box. Alright, so this is kind of dumb, but you have too much wiggle room this way. So I'm going to have to put it in this way because it's wider than that. So let's try that again. Okay. What I'm going to do to get the depth of this time around is a slightly different technique. If you can see that. What I'm doing is I'm lining up the inside edge with the edge of the wood. I'm going to mark just a hair past the inside edge of this. So, do that. And now we'll get the depth of the box. I'll mark it that way. Now I'm going to just take this over to my bandsaw here, cut this out real quick. I'm not going to show you because honestly, it'll take more time to set up than it will to set up the camera than it will to cut it. So, back in a second. Okay, now comes, well, this part's going to be both easy and difficult. First thing to do is to center the piece as best as I can, because you do want it to be centered. I'm not sure if I want them like that or like that. I think like that looks a little bit better. It'll be displayed sideways like that. So you take this, when you have them nice and centered, press down just lightly because the bottom is felted, so it does have a little bit of grip by itself. Now I want to sharpen up these lines as best I can. I even push into the wood so there's an actual indentation into the wood as well, not just a light line. And I'll show you why in a moment. Now that I have that indented, even if it does get a little scraped off, it's not going to matter because I'll be able to find the indent. Now for the difficult part. It's actually a perfect fit that way, but like I said, the box does taper. So I need to figure out how I'm going to account for that taper. Because it tapers this way and this way, which is how the acrylic was poured. I guess this is poured as a single piece, and to allow it to release from the mold, it does need to have a slight taper to it. So it looks like I need to just bring just a little nip off each end. And a lot of this is going to be chisel work, so I can go be nice and slow about it. Be very deliberate. Now, I was working on a big project last week where I had to fine-tune a lot of the small intricate connections. So my chisel, I had to keep my chisel razor sharp. So it's still super sharp. So I should be able to do all of this or most of this just by hand. Now the trick to a lot of this is to go very slow. Take your time. Because it's very, very easy to mess up and take off too much. Okay, now I hit that with the strip sander. You can see it fits in there nice and level now. And I did just nip the edges a little bit to give it just the hair's bit of wiggle. Now I'll show you why I indented that. Now the idea is to go right on the curve, or right on the line, down, and then over to it. I actually want to oversize the lines a little bit because I will be covering the top in felt and this inset portion with the felt as well. So you want about half the thickness of the felt, or sorry, one full thickness of felt larger than all of these holes. That way, when you press this dragoon down into it, he will have a friction fit into the felt because the felt will squish a little bit and hold him firm. Because remember, this is only supposed to be a temporary housing that's meant to protect the toy soldier here. So when you go down with these, I keep these guys super sharp. And this is actually my favorite chisel. I don't even remember where I got it. I think I got it at AC Moore or something. Long time ago. Now that your relief cut is made, it's just a straight plunge cut. You want to take it and go in at about a 45 just to establish everything. And you cut in from the inside. And you just keep working yourself around until you have that all taken out and taken care of. Alright, now that you have that established, all you're going to do is bring this center section down to level. It's much better to take several light passes than big heavy cuts, even though it's tempting. Because when you do light cuts, you're cutting the wood. When you do heavy cuts, you're splitting the wood. So when you're cutting it, you have a lot more control. When you're splitting it, the grain has more control. You see how this is all just rolling up nice and simple like that? That is a beautiful sign. And you can tell they're all rolling up the same amount, which means I'm getting approximately the same depth with each cut. Exactly what you want. Now that you have that bulk material down, instead of going at an angle, you want to be going flat. So earlier I was going and in at an angle like that. Now I'm going flat to level things off. When you guys are doing, tedious work like this, what goes on in your mind? For me, I generally sing songs in my head. I'm usually very quiet when I'm doing this, but my mind's constantly going. Because this is like a museum piece. I have the paperwork on him somewhere around here. I don't know, but I know he did at one point own a museum, and a lot of these toy soldiers here were in them. Let's see. Obviously, quite the model soldier buff and historian. He carved many of the master figures that were then, it would seem, produced by a company called Thomas Industries. The figures were certainly part of the museum display. Arquette at one time owned Gettysburg's Soldiers National Museum. So this actually is a piece. This is a museum piece. So you want to make sure these edges are nice and clean before you check the fit. Even check the fit, because you don't want to damage a museum piece. Remember, when it's just bare wood like this, you don't want it to be tight on the base, because we're going to be covering this. Well, yeah, whatever. This is going to be covered in felt, so it's going to take up some space and provide the friction that we need to fit this guy. So it looks like I need a little bit more on the sides. Front to back looks pretty good, if you can see that. But there's no side-to-side movement. Now, if you notice, when I'm scoring, I'm only going down just a hair's depth all the way across until the entire line is established. And then you want to come back and cut the sides to join it. That way, it doesn't have a chance of splitting off, even though the direction of the grain that I'm doing this right now would mitigate that. Still better safe than sorry. Now, what I'm going to do, and this isn't necessary, but it is one thing that I do like doing just a little bit, is I'm going to slightly, very slightly undercut the edges. It's going to be less than 1 degree. Then I'm going to start the undercut about halfway down the thickness of this recess. And the reason for that is any dust or extra glue, I want it to be able to squeeze out into that undercut, as opposed to taking up space on the sides. Again, not necessary by any stretch, but it's just something I like to do. It's a precaution I take, because I'm already at this point. Why would I want to waste all this time and effort? I don't know if you can even see that. It's barely there. Just enough to take up a little glue squeeze out. You want to be very careful with this, because since you're going in, and this, especially because this is ingrain here, you want to go very light, because you could end up lifting the top surface, and that's not what you want to do at all. So if you're going to do an undercut like this, be very careful and really let the tool do the work. Do not push it. All right, so let me get some spray stuff, some spray adhesive, and a sheet of my felt. Well, I'm going to put the sheet on first, just to make sure I don't need to take any extra material out. And wrap this up. I'm telling you, I always keep these pieces for my bandsaw containers for them, because they are unlimitedly helpful for little projects like this. Now, if you want it to be removable with this stuff, this is just craft bond. You spray it and let it sit for a few minutes. But if you want it to be more permanent, like we do in our case, spray it and you put it right on immediately. I'm just gonna tack that in real quick. And the first thing you want to work is the recess, because that's the most important part. And everything else is just cosmetic. Keep working that back and forth till you get nice clean lines. And before everything is too set, again, check your statue, the recess. Still pulls out nice and easy, so there's just enough pressure to hold them. And there you go. Nice. Much nicer than just having it rattle around in there. So YouTube, thanks for watching. Like always, I appreciate you guys coming out. And if you could, go check out my buddy's store, Olympus Treasures, for your chance to bid on this little dragoon. I mean, he has cool stuff all over there all the time. He like action figures and stuff, and just weird things that they're hard to find, really. Well, kind of like this guy, the official Cliff Arquette Soldier. Very cool. So that's how you make a nice little stand for a display piece. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you coming out. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I release new content every Monday and Friday. On Mondays, I have a Manliness Monday, where I teach you everything about, well, how to be a man, etiquette, gun safety, things like that. And on Fridays, I do project videos, and clearly they range the gambit. Everything from, well, making museum quality display stands to making the camera that I'm shooting this video on right now, and everything in between. And if you ever have a question on, anything about being manly, or have any woodworking questions or any projects that you'd like to see, please let me know in the comment section below. I really appreciate your input, guys. And as always, thank you for helping me make the world better, one kerf at a time. I'll see you next week.